The Democrats are set to have their first debates in Miami next week. There will be 10 on stage. The first night, 10 on stage. The second night, the moderators have been chosen. The field has been selected. Some have been left out. Let's talk about that a little bit with Dr. William Rosenberg, professor of political science at Drexel University. He's the co-author of, among other things, News Verdicts, The Debates in Presidential Campaigns. He is tweeting at DRB Rosenberg. Bill, welcome back. Thanks for being here today.
Good morning.
So 20 is a lot. 10 even on the stage is a lot. What are you thinking about these upcoming debates?
Well, I think the Democratic Party has put itself into a conundrum because of 2016, when there was such a controversy between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton over debate formats, and the number of them. I think they've bent over backwards to try and appear to be more open, to be more transparent, to be more inclusive. And by doing that, they have lowered the bar so low that we have ended up with just an enormous field, sort of like the field that we saw with the Republicans in 2016 initially, with the cocktail debate originally early in the evening, and then the regular debate that took place later after the first debate was over. So I think what's happening is that the Democratic Party and Mr. Perez want to talk about such a strong bench and about how they're really trying to have everyone involved. I think for voters, I think it's a bit confusing, and it's a little bit disingenuous as well by the party to suggest that these are all viable candidates. They're really not. They've already been shown through the polls and through their own efforts to not be able to generate much support.
And so they've changed the rules for subsequent debates, right? In other words, they're making it even tougher to continue on.
Yes, and in fact, while they, on the outside, have toughened the debates, current debate structure is that a candidate had to have at least 1% in 3 approved polls and 65,000 individual donors. By debate 3 and 4, the numbers are going to double. Not really surprising that the number should double by that point, because the candidates should be getting a lot more campaign donors by the time the 3rd and 4th debate comes about. But we're still talking about a 2% bar. And essentially the question is someone with that low of a public presence really going to have a reasonable chance to be a contender? And my suggestion is probably not. These are candidates that are probably looking in many ways to make a name for themselves, to be able to run for an office in the future, for example, a congressman running for Senate or someone running for governor, or maybe being able to show themselves as a potential vice presidential candidate. But 20, I think, is really just too much.
Billy, you have spent a lot of time talking about, writing about, discussing, teaching about debates. Are these really debates?
Well, they're actually, in the broad sense, they are, in a sense that they're debating the issues of the day. They're not really debating each other. The candidates are not even really supposed to interact with each other on the field. We also see that there are different debate formats, all called debates. We have the debate where there's a moderator asking a question of each person. We have a situation where there is a possibility for interaction between candidates. We have what are called town hall meetings, which the candidate takes questions from the field. We have other debates where the audience is not even allowed to utter a word after the candidates receive a applause round in the beginning and an applause round at the end. They're really just televised sort of opportunities, and the audience is there simply as a prop. So they are debates, but they're not necessarily true debates like we think about from a historical perspective. The one that comes to mind most clearly is actually not even a presidential debate. It was the Lincoln-Douglas debates. But they were running for United States Senate in Illinois in the 1800s. They went from town to town, and they stood on a box, and they basically went at it. And partisan newspapers of the time either were for Lincoln or for Douglas, reported an entirely different perspective. So we want to talk historically about fake news. Well, we certainly had it during the Lincoln-Douglas debates.
Yeah, and of course the follow-up to that was that newspapers were extremely partisan in those days. So depending on which newspaper you read, you got an entirely different recount of the debate. Plus, each person spoke for like 45 minutes at a time. to huge crowds, like 20,000 people, I think, in one place. But it's a fascinating exercise, and I think it's interesting to bring that up. I did want to ask this question because obviously people want to know more about the candidates, and this is not going to be the opportunity to do that. The irony of this is that with all of the news that's on 24 hours a day, we have had some town halls, but in general, it seems to me that the news coverage of these events usually will take a particular sound bite or a particular issue, and it will just grind it, chew that piece of steak until it has absolutely no flavor left before it abandons that to go on to something else, so that despite more time being available to cover the issues, there is a lot less spent talking about specific issues. It's just really more highlighting a particular issue and talking about that ad nauseum.
Well, I think you have a very good point. The other point I would say that's related to that is the economics of these debates. I mean, what we have is these town halls basically require almost no production costs, yet provide 2 hours of programming for an organization like CNN, who is producing it, and basically the only people that actually see the town hall are CNN audiences. Others see what happened when there was news coverage about maybe some startling fact that came out. So what we're really looking at is sort of a corporate sort of process by which programming becomes eligible in the name of good governance, but essentially it's almost like a free production that comes forward. The other thing that's a little bit problematic is some of the candidates, there were 3 of them, got excluded from the debates. One of the networks already announced that the day of the debates they're going to have a special programming opportunity, almost like another town meeting, for them to have an audience to basically hear their perspectives as well. So while more information is generally good, I think what we're really looking at here is a situation where we're being fed information that we think is really insightful and important for our decision making, but probably really not so much. You know, traditionally the debates as we know them today were really not even that relevant until we got to the first fall debate in the general election. That's the first time that people used to tune in. And while the media focuses very heavily on these early debates, they're of much less consequence than those fall debates where we see a candidate from each of the 2 political parties really going at it and really being able to compare them, Donald Trump versus whoever the candidate's going to be, if it's going to be Biden or Harris or whoever, to see how they fare against each other and to see sort of the mettle that each one of them have.
Last question, Bill, and any thoughts on how the moderators are selected for this?
Well, the moderators basically come from the organization that presents the debate. So when we look at the first set of debates, they're all being run by NBC, and 3 of the 4 moderators are NBC hosts. It's not really a situation where it's sort of an open field of journalists from many different organizations, but that's true for a while now, that we're going to see the NBC debate, we're going to see the ABC debate, we're going to see the CNN debate, and each one of those is going to be loaded up with their cast of star anchors or star reporters, and as a result, there's going to be a particular take that comes away from each one of those. When Fox does the debates, it'll be perhaps, I think Fox is doing one of them, will be their anchors' perspectives.
Yeah, they're not doing any. They're not doing any Democratic debates.
Be doing them this time.
Yeah, they're not doing any this time around. The Democratic National Committee has said no. And I think it's a really interesting question because Carol Simpson, for example, did the town hall debate among Ross Perot, Bill Clinton, and George H.W. Bush in 1992. She was not one of the top anchors, but she was somebody who they thought could handle the debate. But when now we're talking about the anchors of the high-profile personalities, and there are questions about whether or not it's right to have somebody like a Rachel Maddow who might not be considered just a strict journalist, more of an advocate, if you will, and whether or not that's exactly whether or not that would work. But I guess if you've got 10 people on the stage, it almost doesn't matter because you're going to be kind of minimized, I guess, at this point.
Well, the other thing I just would say for your audience is let's remember that the Republicans are having 0 debates. So if there was a Republican debate, I'm certain that Fox would be happy to hold it. But in the Republican field, we really only have one candidate that's publicly challenged in any serious way, Donald Trump, and that's William Weld. And there's no discussion at all of any debates on the Republican side.
I would guess that any of the networks would love having Donald Trump being a part of a debate because the surprise factor would be so great that anyone would love to have him on the stage and you know, if nothing else, to have him up there. But we'll see how it turns out.
We're likely to see him next fall, assuming that he either doesn't leave office or isn't removed. So
there we go.
The public will have their opportunity.
Indeed. Dr. William Rosenberg. Bill, thanks so much.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Dr. William Rosenberg, professor of political science at Drexel University, co-author of News Verdicts, The Debates in Presidential Campaigns. It was a while ago, but still instructive and interesting and great background for the upcoming debates. He is tweeting at Dr. B. Rosenberg, at Dr. B. Rosenberg.